around that time where new players will be jumping onto Black Ops 4 for the first time and joining us all, and it's also around that time where there might be some things that still surprise you within Black Ops 4. So today I want to take a look at 10 little secret tips or things you didn't know about within Black Ops 4 that can really, I think, help you in a lot of different situations. We're going to be breaking down 5 little tips from multiplayer and 5 from Blackout as well to give you situationally some heads up stuff that in the moment you might never think about, but could also get you out of a pinch situation. So if you guys have any that you want to pitch for, say, a follow-up video, feel free to let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and also let me know if you guys want to see more of this stuff to begin with. But regardless, let's just jump right into it. Let's start out with multiplayer, where the big, large majority, most likely, of this audience is focusing more so around. The first one we'll discuss here deals with one specialist in particular, that being Prophet. Now, as you guys know, there's the Seeker shock drone that will follow you around and stun a player, and a lot of times it results in a free kill. But the other part of Prophet is his Tempest, returning from Black Ops 3 in a sense, but in a slight different variation. The Tempest is probably already one of the best specialist weapons out there, but one thing that you might not notice, because you might either just spam it, run out of ammo, or you run out of time, whatever it may be, you might not notice that the Tempest ammo actually refills upon various number of circumstances. Anything that brings up score on your screen will give you an additional shot in that Tempest. So things like picking up tags and kill confirmed, UAV encounter assists, teammate assists, or one thing that really was the catalyst for me thinking about this was that you may have noticed that the score streaks actually get you kills as well. So if you have, say, a sniper's nest, or if your teammate steals a kill whenever you down somebody with that Tempest, it will then give you one additional bullet for every time that happens. So any circumstance here with this where it brings up score, you end up getting additional ammunition out of that Tempest. The only thing that sort of counters this and doesn't make it anything that is super unbalanced is that timers still persist. You still end up having that roughly 35 seconds or so with the Tempest before you end up reverting back to your regular weapon and class setup. So keep that in mind next time you use the Tempest. If you have score streaks that will more than likely reward you in score, maybe try and call them in while you end up having the Tempest active. So that way you get a little more of a buffer for how you can play with it. The next thing you might not know all that much is dealing actually with the optics for weapons and the recoil patterns. Now, we've seen this in the past before with other franchise titles of Call of Duty, and how a lot of the times you end up seeing sometimes even some optics completely remove recoil altogether. I know that there was one with the Vesper in Black Ops 3 that was really a sort of issue that whenever you equipped, I think it was the variable zoom on it or something, it ended up completely getting rid of any recoil. So didn't matter how far away you were, how close you were not move, it was a laser pointer. But the same thing kind of applies with Black Ops 4, but the interesting part is that with each individual weapon, it has its own separate spray pattern, unique to that weapon, and so therefore, mitigation via attachments and all can vary. But when you take a look at the different optics, each optic then reduces its own recoil in some other capacity as well, with one of the most across-the-board prominent for recoil mitigation being the Recon Sight. You can see on screen right now a variation of a couple of the optics to showcase what exactly I mean in the spray patterns there with each, and as you can see, usually across the board, the Recon is what is going to end up giving you the least amount of recoil whenever you aim down sight. It is a close call between some of the optics, but regardless, you can end up playing around with what you feel comfortable with, but bear that in mind that sometimes it doesn't always come down to a grip 1 or 2. You can end up using some optics on the weapon as well if you have, say, an extra slot you want to throw on your pick 10 class setup. Jumping over into our third multiplayer tip here is a little situational. If you are playing on the map Arsenal, one of the big things that people always get annoyed by are, again, the Seeker shock drone, and also the big one being Nomad's dog. Now, these ones, the interesting part about both of these is they don't have pathing, or they're just simply not allowed in the vents. So if you end up hearing that terrifying beep beep or the bark of the dog and you're around any of the entrances to the vents, well, you can simply just jump in and they won't end up doing any damage or any harm to you. The interesting part as well is that if you're somebody that is, say, playing as Prophet and you're camping in the vents and you're looking to get some use out of your ability, the Seeker shock drone, if placed within the vents, it actually simply explodes right there. But if you try and call in, say, Nomad's dog, it just doesn't spawn in. You just won't have that ability, and it won't cost you, but it is something that it won't call it in the vents. Now, this to me is rather interesting because I feel like a lot of people do camp in the vents of Arsenal, and so therefore you'd think it would be advantageous to be able to get something that would flush them out, but that doesn't seem to be the case. So therefore, if you do end up coming into contact with either of those and you need a quick little escape, the vents are probably your best option. Staying on the topic of Arsenal, one that I find that not a lot of people, at least whenever I go and play public matches, I'll see my teammates trying to kind of camp it out, but they don't realize they can actually take a little more advantage of it, is that the motion sensor doors on Arsenal aren't necessarily only triggered by character motion. You can end up triggering these by actually shooting one bullet and it'll open the door as well. So if you're, say, somebody that sees them spawning in the back and they're coming up through that left side hallway, you can be at the back of either of those corridors and pick enemies off, whether they're camping out your spawn or you're the one that's camping the spawn, and all around the map it works the same exact way. So not necessarily do you have to run into it and hope you don't get picked off so your teammate can get the shot behind you, but you can do this yourself as well. And the final tip here for multiplayer is one that is just really whimsical and more so quirky than anything else. If you end up going on the map Gridlock, there is a fire truck in one of the back spawns. If you take a look at this, you jump up on top, there's actually water spraying from the hoses. If you jump in front of it and you end up jumping into the spray, it'll actually launch you across right towards mid-map a little bit. So this can be used advantageously, say, in Search and Destroy if you're playing some sort of mode where you have to gain position fast. But regardless, it gives you that momentary speed boost that will eventually translate to a couple of steps in-game. Jumping over to the Blackout end, we're going to talk a little bit about some stuff that I think can really help you out. One, firstly, being some ways to mitigate fall damage. Granted, you can take fall damage in multiplayer, but being that there is a lot more elevation within Blackout, it's probably something you'll run into contact a little further with in this. This is a 3-for-1 kind of, where the first one we'll talk about is that sliding actually mitigates fall damage a little bit. It doesn't negate it completely, but if you were to, say, just fall off an edge where you'd end up taking damage at the bottom, and then you end up trying to jump and then in midair slide, you activate that sliding so it, as soon as you hit, it slides in. That's something that will mitigate the fall damage ever so slightly. It cuts the damage dealt in, I believe, around half, and so therefore it's definitely situationally a great thing to do if you need to get out of a pinch situation. Additionally, one thing that honestly was incredibly curious to me, because you usually think about mobility as that movement perk, and while it does have some extra added abilities in there, like no fall damage, to me I never really thought that there really was no end to that. Because if you use mobility, not only will you get faster movement speed and all things that come along with that, but there really is no bounds to how far you can fall without taking damage. You can walk straight off the edge of construction and you'll be totally fine. Another interesting one is the grappling hook also will allow you to mitigate any fall damage that will happen. Grappling down to somewhere, it won't do damage, but if you end up jumping, that's when it will still do a little bit of damage. So make sure you follow it the whole way through and you'll be good to go. The second tip here at this one deals more so with not necessarily just rage quitting. I find myself doing this quite a few times whenever I played quads with my friends. I would just get a little ticked off at how I ended up dying, and therefore I'd go all the way back to the main menu. But if you're somebody like me that will do that, make sure that you don't, because even while you're spectating, you end up getting it to your progression. If you end up going all the way back out to the menu, it does not help at all with your contraband stream to your progression. So therefore, just by simply gaining that time in game, if you're carrying a teammate to victory, you're also helping carry them a little further to that next black market progression tier. The next tip we'll talk about is one that is honestly one of my favorites within Blackout, and I don't know if many people know it exists or that you can do this, because anybody that I've mentioned to whenever gaming with them, their reaction's usually the same of, wow, I didn't know you could do that. But this one being with a passenger in a cargo truck. One thing that is a bummer about the cargo truck is that if you do have somebody in your passenger, the only passenger seat is in the back or the bed of that truck. So you don't have any protection once you are exposed from the back or even from the side. The most you can do is crouch while moving. So therefore, you're still very vulnerable from anybody that may be shooting from the sides. That is, except if you have the tranquility or sitting emote. If you end up doing this in the back of the cargo truck, it actually brings you down to a full sitting gesture, and therefore your entire hitbox is below that shelf or sort of arm of the bed of the truck. And so therefore, if you're an enemy looking at it from ground level at the side, you can't see the player in the bed of the truck, and so therefore you have no ability to do damage to them while sieging a truck that may be passing by. So this is something that will really help out. If you can end up getting a whole squad using this, you'll be greatly more protected while on the move. Now granted, the back end of that, if they're right behind the truck, it's still vulnerable, but regardless, you're still cutting down about 50% of the engagements. The next one is great, especially if you end up playing solo, but if you end up finding a trophy system in a helicopter, well, the big thing that whenever you're on the move in a helicopter is you're kind of out there in the open. There's no real protection up in the air to a launcher that may end up trying to take you down. accept that trophy system, because if you place it, depending on where you are at, you can end up actually blocking out incoming missiles by using that trophy system if you put it in the back or on the nose, even if you can end up balancing it there. Now, there is some situations where it will be very tough to place it exactly where you want, and for it to work, you need to have it be visible to where that rocket is coming. So if you have it in the back, you want to place it right in the middle of that sort of flatbed, whereas sometimes it can glitch out and go halfway into the back and halfway into the helicopter, and that won't help you at all. But if you can end up positioning it right, you can actually end up blocking without taking damage or taking minimal damage from the rocket. And the final tip here that we'll talk about is one that really frustrates me personally, because it is something that I die to every so often while thinking I'm a little more protected, that being the fact that you can counter cargo trucks with sticky grenades. Now, this would make sense to me if you do it in boats. You can take out boats like this with a sticky grenade. You can also take out helicopters, but an armored cargo truck is one that to me doesn't make as much sense, because grenades, if not placed properly, won't do as much damage to a cargo truck. But if you end up placing the sticky grenade anywhere on the hood of the truck, it'll blow it up and instantaneously give you that kill as well. Sometimes it won't even blow up the truck, but it will kill the driver inside just simply due to placement. And it's usually a guaranteed kill at that point. And if they somehow miraculously end up living through it, well, they'll probably exit out and be one shot, or you can usually pick them off still at the very tail end of the situation as they're driving away. But about 99% of the encounters that I've come into contact with, it's exploded the truck instantaneously or given that kill instantaneously. So that's something that if you see somebody charging at you, you don't have all that much or any cover, just simply try and dodge it while also sticking the cargo truck with a grenade. That said, we're gonna wrap it up. That's 10 tips here that you may or may not have known in multiplayer as well as Blackout. So first things first, how many of these did you guys already know off the bat? Is there any that really surprised you and maybe you can implement into your day-to-day game? Is there anything that you guys would like to add to this list? Because honestly, I'd love to keep this going to give you guys the best tips and tricks possible. And so therefore, if you guys have any want to add for, say, next week's episode, if we turn this into a weekly thing, feel free to let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. But hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to drop a like down below. And of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure you guys subscribe so you don't miss a single thing regarding all things Black Ops 4, multiplayer, Blackout, zombies. We got you covered with the best of updates, news, information, tips, tricks, things you didn't know about like these, and all things considered. So if you enjoy any of that, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single thing. If you guys also want to follow me over on Twitter and Instagram, those are the best places to get connected with me outside of YouTube. Practically live on both those. So if you guys want to check out a conversation, ask me a question, whatever it is, link in the description below for both of those. Check them out if you guys want to. But all that saying out of the way, thank you guys all so much for watching. Mine has been Espresso. I'll see you guys later. Take care and peace.